Guardians of the Galaxy ain't got nothing on Captain America the Winter Soldier. Lower your expectations, I'd say to Thor the Dark World levels. Now this is my spoiler review. We are going to go in depth to Guardians of the Galaxy, into deep space, to decide what worked and what didn't. And we're going to have a great conversation down below in the comments, and I think at least that's what we can take away from this film, which I feel is a swing and a miss, to at least, have a chance to have an honest discussion about Marvel, and I'm hoping that they're not going the Pixar route. But if you'd like to watch my non-spoiler review, you can click here, so head on over there. Also, I highly recommend before you see this movie that you watch this video that I did about Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet, because if you don't see it before the movie, I think you're going to be a little lost, and you might still be a little lost even after you've watched it, but at least, it'll give you some bearings so that you can kind of have a better idea of what's going on and watch Marvel try to explain it to you in the movie. Alright, so if you're still here, you're ready for the spoiler review, and we're going to go character by character, which is the format that I think, as I've been saying, works very well for these. And of course, don't forget to turn on your annotations if you have them turned off, because there'll be a table of contents here, which where you can click around to, what characters you're the most interested in, etc. Now, speaking of characters, I have to say I think Guardians of the Galaxy has too many characters. And one of the reasons that the Avengers work so well, and we say this all the time, but apparently even Marvel isn't aware of this because they made the mistake here, and that's that they had so many solo movies to establish the characters. So you didn't have to waste time in the Avengers with an origin story, etc., which I think really slows down this movie. We gotta get the team together. I think that, Avengers was able to hit the ground running because the audience already had a relationship with those characters. And maybe Justice League will be saved by the fact that the viewers have such a strong relationship with those characters from previous incarnations. But this is like textbook 101 on how not to do a team movie and why team movies are so difficult, because nobody here gets enough attention. So let's start out with Peter Quill. Chris Pratt, I think he was more entertaining in the Lego movie. And for all the talk about his abs, you only see them for like a couple of seconds here. And I think that he was more Andy than movie star, Andy from Parks and Recreation. He had some killer lines. I thought the Footloose thing was inspired. But, there was never, Peter Quill was, he was that guy at the bar who was all pickup lines. In a movie, in an ideal situation, the pickup guy with the bar feeds you a bunch of stupid lines, but then you see a glimpse of something in there. You see some heart. And you never saw that with Peter Quill. He never had that moment where you were like, oh, I see, you're actually really awesome. And for instance, there's this package his mother gives him. The movie started out really well, I felt. I really liked the whole scene in the hospital, and I was like, ooh, this is going to be a special movie. Maybe I'll see it twice. And then by the end of the movie, I was like, I do not want to see that again. But anyway, his mother gives him that package, and she says, open it up after I'm gone. And I have to tell you, at the end of the film, when Peter Quill goes to finally open it up, I'd forgotten about it. And I was like, oh yeah, we have to open that. And if he'd never opened it, I think it would have taken me a while to notice, and I don't think I would have felt bad about it, because they just didn't create any of that emotional weight or connection. Now, I do think he should have opened that package earlier on, or they should have established the fact that his mother is the one who referred to him as Star-Lord, because that was a really nice idea, and I think it would have really added that special level, that heart, that Peter Quill needed during the entire film. I mean, the Star-Lord thing was just treated as a joke, like, I want to be known as Star-Lord. And sure, it was funny, but it would have been funny and meaningful if you'd added in the elements about his mother. And then also, I feel like another mixtape, I don't know. I thought the soundtrack with the golden oldies got old real fast, and I think that they were utilized too much, and they didn't work as well as they did in the trailer in the movie, which was disappointing. I was like, I wish he had some current music, or that was like a composer in a box that could come up with an actual score for this movie. Really, I was disappointed in that. So I would have played up the mom. I would have played up more of Peter Quill's, speaking of origin stories, I would have played up his origin story more, and his father coming to Earth, etc. I mean, I understood a lot of what was going on because I'm familiar with the character from the comics, but someone who's not familiar with the comics is not going to get any of this. It is not going to be at all connected to the character, and I think they shouldn't have saved that for the sequel. Don't worry about your sequel. Worry about the movie you're making, and then you can, focus on the sequel after you've pulled the first one off. And I think this movie is a little bit too in love with itself and a little bit too, like, oh, we're going to have an amazing sequel. And then also Peter Quill, I said, the set design and the costume design sometimes came off as Star Trek light. And Peter Quill is definitely Captain Kirk light, and I was just surprised at that. To have the alien, the alien chick who's a different color right away. I was like, that's textbook Kirk. You just can't steal his moves. So that was another problem I had with Peter Quill. Then Gamora. Wow. Not a fan. I mean, Gamora wasn't like offensive. I wasn't like, oh my God, this is horrible. Get it off the screen. It was just disappointing. Because as I said in my non-spoiler review, she's supposed to be the deadliest woman in the galaxy. Like an assassin who knows no equal. And in this movie, even the lowest life forms were able to get the jump on her, and she needed to be rescued a lot. I would have said Gamora needed to be rescuing everyone else. I also didn't appreciate shoehorning a romance in between her and Peter Quill. In the comics, there is no romantic relationship, at least in the current incarnation that Brian Michael Bendis is writing, and I much prefer that. I just prefer them being a team of mercenaries, and just having Gamora really be there to flirt and, it's been done. Oh, I'm really tough, but I want to fall in love with you, but I have this brutal exterior because of all the horrible things that happened to me, etc., etc. Also, when, they had a nice scene when Peter Quill was talking to her about Footloose, I thought that was funny, but then when she had the thing about why were there sticks up their butts, I was like, whoa, 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 that's Drax's comedy routine. You can't all not get a metaphor, okay? And how do you know what a butt is, Gamora? I mean, everybody really, that occurred to me after watching the movie, but I was like, how does everyone speak the same language here? Isn't this supposed to be deep space? And at least have like some kind of universal translator. Just get that out of the way. And then Zoe Saldana, I thought, didn't really bring anything to the table. I think that all the work was done by her special effects makeup team. And otherwise, it was just Zoe Saldana. And I think that she really needed to try and do something extra special to elevate this character. Like what Angelina Jolie did with Maleficent, or Johnny Depp with Jack Sparrow. Even Bradley Cooper. I'll get to Rocket Raccoon in a moment. He did a great job with, altering his voice, having some kind of, I guess like, it seemed to me like almost like a New York accent. I wasn't quite sure, but I wasn't like, oh, hey, it's Bradley Cooper. And I appreciated that. And I think Zoe Saldana didn't do that at all. Let's move on. Let's do Drax first. I want to do Rocket Raccoon and Groot next to each other. So Drax. As I said in my non-spoiler review, with all due respect to Dave Bautista, he cannot act. And I'm surprised that nobody noticed this on set, and I don't know why they gave him so many lines. I mean, also, in all fairness to Dave Bautista, they gave him some very wooden lines. I think even the most seasoned actor would have a hard time doing something with this material. But Dave Bautista, it's too much too soon. Maybe he could get there eventually. I'm hearing some people say some positive things about Dave Bautista. He didn't work for me, but I would have been like, you know what? Baby steps for Bautista. You just can't throw him into the deep end of acting, which I think this movie did. He's supposed to have a very strong emotional core, and I never felt it. And I didn't feel he was particularly strong either. He was just, he was a wrestler with cool body tattoos. All right, then over to Rocket Raccoon. I loved Rocket Raccoon. He still needs some work, but he's a fantastic character, and I really kind of wish that he and Groot just had their own movie. I thought that everything this character did was wonderful and unique and adorable and badass at the same time. We talked at Comic-Con about Batman being cute and badass in his new armor, and I think Rocket Raccoon shows that that's an effective combination. I loved the running gag about him wanting the fake leg and then the fake eye. That was great. And I thought it was very touching, and still at the same time, he was so cute when he was like coming out of the shower, and just with no words, you could see the electrodes and machine parts in his back. That spoke volumes, and it was one of the more sophisticated moments in the film. I loved his drunk speech about, not wanting to have been made. That was all really well done. And even his cute little hand at the end when they were trying to all, share the burden of grabbing onto this Infinity Stone. That was like, as soon as his little hand came in, I thought it was so cute. And I loved when he woke up and he had, sleep fur face. I thought that was a great moment. And, he's the only character that got me to laugh out loud during the movie. And I just really liked him a lot. And I cared a lot about him. When Drax pets his head at the end because he's so sad, it was great. I loved it. And I'm glad they didn't make him wave his tail like a dog. I was glad that the movie showed some restraint there. But he was really a good character. Very well realized, by far and away the best thing in this movie. I also liked Groot. Now, as I said in my non-spoiler review, Vin Diesel, no reason to have him involved here. It's really just to put his name on the property. But Groot, really interesting character. And I like what they did with Groot. I love that he could create those, fluorescent little dewdrops. That was great, and I love the way he, having his organic qualities in like this futuristic bleak world of space was really touching and created some really great moments, like when he surrounded everyone with his branches at the end of the movie to save everybody. That hit me. I liked that a lot. And and this is a character, by the way, who really didn't talk, obviously, so I appreciate what the special effects team was able to do with the acting there. And then also baby Groot was adorable. He was so cute. I loved when he was dancing at the end. I thought that was so cute. And I liked when he was stretching his little arms at the end of the movie, and Rocket looked so cute holding him in a little planted pot, a little planter. It was just great. Those guys are just full of win, and I really like them a lot. And that's what you get that July 28th, 2017 date. I would not return. When the end of the movie came up and they said, the Guardians of the Galaxy will return, I was like, really? They're really going to return? You guys are going to do this again? I mean, you just barely escaped with your lives this time. Or franchise, I guess, more appropriately. All right, so let's move on to our villains. Let's talk about the big guy in the room, Thanos. We have a big Thanos scene, and this is supposed to be it. This is Thanos. And I have to say, I was underwhelmed. Maybe Thanos uses Botox, but he didn't use his facial muscles, that's for sure. And I was like, maybe James Brolin wasn't there to animate this character. They said that he had motion capture. Maybe he's just doing that in the future. But I thought there was very little of James Brolin there. And also, his voice, again, very James Brolin-y. And also villains are supposed to, he didn't really disguise it really. You were just like, that's James Brolin's voice. And he was just a dude in a chair. I think really memorable villains have a lot of flair. And Thanos, so far, has no flair. He's supposed to be the most, forget Gamora. Thanos is supposed to scare even her. He's the most dangerous man in the universe. Right now, I totally understand why death isn't into him. I'd be like, pass, you're kind of boring. There's no personality there, Thanos. And you need a lot of flair to pull off that outfit, too. And right now, he just does not have it. And so, I think very underwhelming for the introduction of a character who's supposed to be, as Kevin Feige keeps saying, the big bad of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'd be like, is it too late to change that? Do you think you can maybe course correct a little bit? And I have high hopes for Ultron. And talk about flair. James Spader has so much flair just in his pinky, or his voice, obviously. That's all they need. Let's move on to Ronan. As I said in the non-spoiler review, I loved Ronan's look. I thought it was fascinating. I thought it really worked and was interesting, the way his face bled. And I think that, Lee Pace, for someone who had to wear so much makeup and so much costume, still managed to come through. So kudos to him in that regard. But it was an underwritten role, and once again, Marvel has a movie with a villain that doesn't register. I did like when he said, I don't remember killing your family, and I probably won't remember killing you. That was very good. But just not enough time was spent on Ronan for him to really register with us and to make a connection. And also, Ronan the Accuser, I think, is a very interesting character in the comics, and that just was not, who's very multifaceted. He even becomes a hero later on and marries one of the Inhumans. None of that. And then at the end, I was really surprised. This man has waited his entire life to destroy this planet, and he finally has the ability. Why would Peter Quill dancing distract him long enough to do anything? I'd be like, in a minute, hold on. I got to destroy this planet. I mean, he was so close to his goal. It was very cartoony. I guess that's the only word I can come up with for why on earth that plan would have been effective. I will say on a side note, it was cool when they were all holding on to the Infinity Stone and they were being ripped apart but yet not ripped apart. I liked that element. I thought that was good. Then Nebula. Karen Gillan, I don't know what happened. She just also had the same problem that Zoe Saldana did, where she brought nothing to the role. It was all costume and makeup. Change your voice. Have them change your voice in post. I don't know. Something. Change your stance. Move differently. Even when she got bent out of shape and then they had her jaw go back into place, it was so sloppy and fast. Like, the arm going into place was cool, but the jaw was just like, bloop, back to Karen Gillan. And I was like, she didn't even, crunch it back in. There was no, intermediate stage where it was kind of off. It was just it was really just like a mouse click on the computer animation from the computer animation team. And I just thought that was disappointing. Also, I had no idea why she was so angry. And I thought that the anger was manufactured. What really stood out to me at one point, she yelled at this other guard and she was like, get out of my way. And it wasn't organic. It was totally this is a moment where we establish that Nebula is a pain in the butt and she's difficult and she's angry. And I was like, I get it. She's been very clear about that up to this point. Thank you. So I was not a fan of Nebula, and there was no reason for her to be in the movie. She just took time away from developing Ronan further. Then the Nova Corps. Again, didn't really see a lot of reason for the Nova Corps. I guess they were our space police and they were necessary in a movie about, um, space criminals, like who's policing them, here we go. And I thought that John C. Reilly did a pretty good job, and Glenn Close did a pretty good job, but they really had nothing to do. I mean, you thought Robert Redford, he had more to do, thankfully. But, Glenn Close, I mean, just a paycheck gig and just to add some credibility to the film and, try and make it seem like a bigger, had some, Glenn Close vouches for this movie. That's all it really was. If they just had like a Glenn Close sticker, that probably would have saved them some money and Glenn Close some time. I did like when all the Nova Corps ships came together and created that net. I thought that was very cool. And they did look like the good guys, right? I mean, they really looked like the good guys with their gold and their stars. You were like, wow, you guys are awesome. You are on the side of good. But then a lot of them died. There was a lot of death and murder and destruction in a film that I think is supposed to be aimed largely at families with children. So that's just a little bit of a heads up if you're taking any small children. They don't actually show it, but it's really heavily implied. And not in like a really cool, awesome way. Like, the kind that sticks with you as a kid. And you're like, oh, that was dark. I love it. This was more just like, did that guy just die? Oh, that's horrible. All right, now Yondu and the Ravagers. Yondu, he was like the hillbilly of the movie where they were like, gosh darn it, Peter Quill. Like he always had Peter Quill and everybody else get the best of him. I was like, how has this man been around for so long? How has he been a successful captain? Why do these people follow him when he always consistently makes mistakes and isn't effective? And also they dropped that line at the end where they were like, we should have just, it's a good thing we didn't give him to his father like we were hired to. And you're like, I think you should have discussed that in the opening of the movie. Like I think it should have been clear, like, Peter Quill's father, sent these people out, and that's why Peter Quill was taken off of Earth. I mean, all that stuff shouldn't be being saved for a sequel, which I think right now probably very few people are demanding. So Yondu, yeah, I mean, and also Michael Rooker, the actor playing the character. Again, it was just Michael Rooker in makeup. I mean, I guess I kind of liked when he was talking back gibberish to that pawn shop guy. That was pretty good. But a lot of times, you were just like, awesome hair and makeup that the actor has done nothing with. All right, then the Collector. I didn't like the Collector at the end of the Game of Thrones, the Thor: The Dark World end credit sequence, and I didn't particularly like him here. I think Benicio del Toro didn't have much to do, and I loved when Rocket Raccoon made fun of him because he was being ridiculous. And also, he's basically just here to explain the Infinity Stones and the power that they have. And he kind of did that, but if that was his sole purpose as a character, I think he should have done a better job explaining what was going on. And then, of course, the Collector has to lead into that end credits sequence. One of you wrote me and said, Grace, what do you think of this end credit sequence with Howard the Duck? Do you feel that Marvel is just not taking its fans seriously anymore, that that's what they would do? And I would say there's two reasons I think that's why they did that for the end credit sequence. One, James Gunn and his humor. I think James Gunn and everyone on set said, oh, won't this be awesome? And they didn't stop to think about how everybody would feel having waited through the entire credits and having just watched a movie that probably wasn't as great as they were hoping. Now, I know some of you are enjoying it, but I think a lot of, I think beyond hardcore fans, it's going to be a tough sell. So I think I would have been like, let's give them something to leave with. And I think the Howard the Duck thing is almost at the level of no reveals at Comic-Con. Very disappointing. So that's one reason. The other reason I think it might have happened is that I suspect Marvel themselves have no idea what's going to happen next except Avengers Age of Ultron. That's why they were able to have that Captain America the Winter Soldier end credit sequence with Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch. Because I think they don't have their films in place. They don't have their Doctor Strange cast, so they couldn't do an end credit sequence with Doctor Strange. And I think they just can't commit to anything right now. And as I said, the parallel between Marvel Studios and Pixar is a scary one, and let's hope that's not the case. But I feel like something that Marvel built so beautifully is in danger of unraveling. So we'll see. But I didn't like the end credit sequence, and I had a problem with them using the Disney "You've Got No Strings on Me" Pinocchio song in the Avengers Age of Ultron teaser at Comic-Con, and now I don't like them bringing Howard the Duck in here. And it's just an example of like, you have to have respect for your subject matter and the source material. You can't just start mixing everything up in a grab bag because it doesn't mean anything to you as a suit, as an industry suit. You need to respect it and take it seriously. Now, as for James Gunn, speaking of taking things seriously, I think James Gunn did step up, but he didn't, as I said in my non-spoiler review, rise to the occasion. And I think he brought Marvel down to an almost trauma entertainment level. And that's very disappointing. And I'm surprised they would sign him up for a second run. He would, at the very least, I wouldn't let him write it. Or he needs a stronger co-writer. I believe that the co-writer on this is her first screenwriting gig. She came out of some kind of like training program for Disney or something, and she needs more training. They needed a professional writer on this, and they don't have one. They needed more professionalism on this film, period. They needed more professional actors. They had none of that, and I think it really, I mean, there's Glenn Close, obviously, Benicio del Toro, but they're all sidelined. And Bradley Cooper, best of the bunch, and look, he did the best performance. Everybody else is just, they're not professional enough. They're not experienced enough. They are not the level of quality that a Marvel movie we've come to expect and that they need to deliver. And so I think that James Gunn, while as I said at the beginning of, as I said in the beginning of my non-spoiler review, I applaud his ingenuity. I like a lot of the unique elements he brought to the table here in terms of design, in terms of both costume and world building, and some of the humor I thought was very refreshing and nice. But at the end of the day, I feel he made like a 90s movie. He made a 90s space movie. And it's not what Marvel should be, which is on the cutting edge. So I'm disappointed. As I said, that's coloring my review a little bit. So I'm curious to how some of you who might have seen this maybe a week ago feel about the movie at this point. Write your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for tuning in to my spoiler review. I'm very curious and excited to discuss this further with you in the comments. So please leave below your own thoughts. And thank you so much for tuning in. And you can check out some more episodes right now.